morning, explorers! Welcome to another episode of the Aquarium of the Pacific's Aquarium Online Academy. It's Wednesday morning at about 9 o'clock. Where are you joining us from? So, this is definitely an interactive program, and we'd love you to be able to participate with us as we explore the aquarium together. So, we are going to put up a number to show you how you can. You are welcome to send us in your questions or observations to these numbers down here. You can text us those live questions to 562-286-1838, or you can email us questions to live@lbaop.org. And you can do those during program because I'm not alone here in the studio. I'm joined by my amazing teammate Courtney, who can help answer those questions with me. So feel free to send those in. Let us know what you're thinking about, what you're curious about, because on today's episode, we're going to be exploring food webs together. Now, you might be wondering why I didn't say food chains, and that's because food webs are much more complex. The way that energy is transferred through the ecosystem is much more complex than just one chain. That would assume that creatures only eat one thing. And we know from studying our amazing creatures here and in their natural environment that creatures eat many different things. Just like we have varied diets, many of them do too. So we're going to start off by doing a few things together. Today as we explore, we ask you to join us in being scientists together. We have to do what scientists do in order to make that possible. So part of what scientists do is they make observations. What does that mean if I was going to make an observation? Take a moment, whisper to the person next to you, share with them. If you were thinking it means looking, definitely has to do with your eyes. But it's not just looking like, yeah, I see there's fish there. It's looking with detail, noticing where are the fish swimming? How are they swimming? What colors are they? Are they all of the same colors? What about their size? Who's hanging at the top of their habitat? And who's hanging down at the bottom? Those are all things that scientists pay close attention to when we're studying animals. So we're going to do that together today. We're going to explore a couple different habitats. We're going to explore cold water habitat, our kelp forest, and we're going to explore warm water habitat, our coral reefs. So I said we're going to be scientists, so let's get into those observations. This here is one of our exhibits here at the Aquarium of the Pacific called our amber forest. I want you to take a minute and see what you notice in this habitat. Now, a habitat is a home for an animal, right? You probably knew that. So let's continue with that learning by adding some new vocab into our science language, right? Today, let's talk about looking for things that are biotic and abiotic. Now, you're hearing bio in there, and bio has to do with biology. And if you know a little bit about that, biology is the study of life on our incredible planet, from all the forms of life that exist here. So, biotic means something that is alive, and abiotic means something that's not alive. So take a moment. I want you to see if you can find two things that are biotic, alive, and two things that are abiotic, not alive. Go ahead and give that a try in our amber forest. Feel free to share out what you're noticing, or you can text in those live questions to 562-286-1838, or you can email us questions at live@lbaop.org. Make sure you get your parents or chaperones' permission before you do. Feel free to send in those observations. Wow, look at that beautiful shark cruising out of that corner there. That is one of our leopard sharks coming through right there. Maybe that's one of the creatures you noticed that was biotic, alive. There's lots of alive things in here. But let's see if we can move over to a different habitat so we can start to explore that place. Now, before we do that, we got to do another thing that scientists do. We share with one another. So you can share out with us, or you can share with who your teammates are at home or at school. So take a moment, deep breath. It takes a lot to explore. Now, sharing your opinion is also something that scientists do as well. It matters that we share out what's in your mind because your perspective is different. You might be noticing that something in our habitat here that none of us have noticed, and that's important. Science is about us coming together and sharing our experiences, sharing our perspective, and learning more together. So let's continue that learning by exploring another habitat here, our incredible kelp forest. Let's see if we can go to our blue cavern exhibit and explore a little bit of what's going on over there. Let's take a moment and make some observations. When you come into this habitat, I want you to think about some of the things that you're seeing. We were talking about biotic and abiotic. Give yourself a moment to find those biotic and abiotic features in this exhibit. Take a moment. So this here is our blue cavern exhibit. This is modeled after an actual dive site here in California. It's off our coast, off the island of Catalina, which is not too far from here. I think it's about 20 miles. But this island has some incredibly rocky cliffs, and it makes up a perfect habitat for this kelp to grow. So the big bushy plants you're seeing here, these are actually an algae called kelp. Kelp is the structure that forms the kelp forest. Now, when you think of a forest on land, you might think of the trees, right? The trees create the structure, the homes where animals can come and make habitat, and plants can come and live and grow. It creates a space for that concentration. That's exactly what our kelp does here. Take a moment and notice how the animals are interacting with the kelp. Are they all in one place? You're noticing we've got some giant and mesmerizing schools of fish here. These are some sardines. They move kind of like one orb all together, which is pretty incredible. A habit of this species. Now, not all fish are schooling fish. See if you can I spy for some fish in this habitat that are not schooling fish. Yeah, some of our larger ones, definitely. Like this incredible giant sea bass here. So, since we're talking about food webs and we're starting to observe some of these animals, I want you to start thinking about how could we create a balance in this habitat? Everyone has to eat, right? Everything that's alive has to consume some kind of energy to keep it alive still and continuing to live. So, let's take these sardines, for example. If you want to draw along with me as we explore, you absolutely can. I'll be creating a food web over on my document camera. You're welcome to grab a piece of paper and some markers. Come on in and join me. So, let's talk about these sardines here. These are a large fish or kind of a smaller fish? Definitely a tiny one. And you might know that sardines are definitely a food that a lot of creatures eat. Have any of you eaten sardines? Some people definitely do. My grandpa loved them. They weren't necessarily for me, but they play an important role in our food web. So let's see if we can start off that food web over here. Come join me on my document camera. Let's draw. So I'm going to split my page so that I can create two habitats. So first things first, let's get a little abiotic features in here, not alive features. So I got like the sediment, the rocks, right? The gravel on the ground, the sand, definitely. Then I noticed I had those kelp. So we got these wiggly kelp hold fast. Little pneumatices. Boop. Now, do you think the kelp is important in the food web? Do you think there's any creatures that might eat kelp? Take a moment, ponder with your teammates. Who might eat kelp? If you've been to the aquarium, you might know this answer. And maybe you even just know this answer because you do. Some creatures that love to eat kelp. I'll see if Courtney could put up a picture for us. Let's see if we can explore this amazing and little spiky creature that loves to eat kelp. An important player in our food web. Yeah, check it out, scientists. What is this animal? Is it even an animal? This ball of spikes is a purple sea urchin, an important animal in our food web. So, the kelp, you can see it's munching on right here. These guys love to eat kelp. But if the urchins are eating the kelp, how does the kelp grow? Well, the kelp gets its energy from the sun. Because it's an algae, it photosynthesizes, it gets its energy from the sun, and it's able to keep growing. Observe how the sun is so important in this habitat. Now, part of the thing that's really amazing about kelp is it only grows in a few places in the world. It needs really specific conditions in order to survive. Now, part of what it needs is very chilly waters. And in California, although it's a sunshiny state, you definitely, if you've ever been in the ocean, know that it's pretty chilly like a river. Our kelp, but it definitely gets a lot of sunshine. So it needs chilly water with a lot of sunshine. And if you notice, there's a lot of little things floating in this water here. I wonder if we could take a closer look at those in just a second. But before we do that, let's come back to my document cam so that we can add in that amazing little sea urchin. Okay, so we've got our kelp. We've got our little spiky urchin. I love these guys. Ball of spikes. Amazing and important creature. We'll talk a little more about them. But then wait, we got to add in those silvery sardines. Kind of working a whole school there. What do you think might eat sardines in a kelp forest? Let's see. Now, we were just about to talk about those teeny little creatures. Let's continue into that now. A moment ago, we were showing these amazing creatures that were floating in that kelp there. Anyone know what these are? They look kind of like little sea bugs, little aliens. Well, amazingly enough, these are creatures. Some of them are animal-based plankton, and some of them are plant-based plankton. So there's two different kinds of plankton. There are phytoplankton, which are the plant ones that get their energy from the sun. They grow bigger and give energy to the zooplankton. And the zooplankton, munch on those guys, the zooplankton are teeny tiny little plankton animals. If you've ever seen SpongeBob, Plankton is an actual plankton. He's modeled after a real one, which is something kind of funny about that amazing show. Did you know it was created by a marine biologist? Fun fact. Let's get back to that plankton there. But plankton is really important because there's some creatures that have to eat it. What do you think could eat plankton? See if you can draw that into your food web. Let's go back over there. If I drew in some teeny little planktons, what could eat those little planktons? Maybe even some teeny tiny fish. But if the fish are eating plankton, and we have urchins in our habitat, I wonder what could eat the urchins and the fish. Let's see if we can explore a creature that's very fuzzy, that lives in this amazing habitat, that can sometimes eat so many urchins that their teeth and their bones turn purple. Observe this amazing creature right here. This is a... Yes, you're right, a sea otter. Exactly. These adorable, look at these little paws here. These adorable but ferocious little creatures are actually in the same family as creatures like wolverines. They're pretty tough little scrappy creatures, which makes them perfect for being able to eat creatures like those sea urchins. Now, they have pretty tough, formidable teeth. They're able to take those urchins and bite right into them. You'd have to have some pretty tough teeth to be able to eat a ball of spikes. But otters can also eat creatures like fish, sea stars, little crabs, snails. They eat a varied diet. And this is one example of a critter that doesn't just eat one thing. So I want you to take a moment. We talked about a couple of those little critters that an otter could eat. Let's see if we can add in an otter and something an otter might eat. Let's go ahead and do that now. So I'm going to add in my little otter, big nose. My little otter belly, otter tail. I've been picking something up. Oh, can't forget the whiskers. Let's say my otter just picked up a sea star. A sea star is an example of a... Oop. Hang on 1 second. There we go. Sorry, friends. I flipped for a moment. A sea star is an example of a creature that could eat plankton. But also, our otter could eat these as well as these. But I wonder, are there any other predators that could live in a kelp forest that are mammals? There's definitely other creatures that are not necessarily sharks, because I know you're probably thinking those. And it's true. Kelp forests have lots of different kinds of sharks in there. There's leopard sharks that live in there. Sometimes we find amazing creatures like wobbegongs. We can find cat sharks. We can find horn sharks. There's so many different amazing kinds of sharks. And the coolest thing about them is there's quite a few little sharks in the kelp forest. The bigger sharks can't necessarily navigate through that space. I wonder if we could see some big predators kind of navigating through that kelp forest space. Let's explore. Beautiful. Excellent. Look at this amazing video here. So these are definitely not otters. They're not seals. They are California sea lions. We can tell because they have those big flippers in the front and those kind of square-like flippers in the back. Did you know they have nails? It's kind of amazing. They're mammals. So that means they have fur and warm blood. Now, look how easily these creatures can maneuver through the kelp forest. Their bodies are adapted to live in this great space. What do you think a sea lion could eat? Take a moment. Fish? Crabs? You might be amazed, and I am too, to find out some amazing information from one of our whale watches last week. These amazing creatures here, a sea lion, last week was spotted eating, drumroll, a small shark. Did you know that sea lions can eat sharks? Oftentimes we think of it the other way around. We think of big great white sharks coming after these big predators. And that's true, they do. But these guys can also eat small sharks because the smallest sharks are about this size and they range all the way to the size of whale sharks. But half the sharks in the ocean are pretty small. They're only about 5 feet or shorter, which is kind of amazing. So take a moment, let's draw on one of these sea lions, and bonus, you can add in a shark. Let's do that now. All right, let's get a wiggly sea lion kind of diving over here. They've got that little heart-shaped nose. And those big old paddles. Those little square ones in the back. Beautiful whiskers. Excellent. And bonus, are you drawing in a shark? You can even draw in a, ooh, I think I might draw a little shark, like a little horn shark hanging out here on the bottom. Because that's kind of what they do. Some sharks hang towards the bottom. Not all sharks have to swim all the time in order to breathe. That's actually a common misconception. So, before we move on, this was our kelp forest. We saw some of our producers, which are the ones creating, like the plankton and the kelp. And we saw some consumers, which are the ones that are taking, like some of these critters here, like the otters, the sea lions, even the urchins, and that little shark. So now, let's take a moment. We're going to explore our other habitat, that warm water habitat. We're going to hop over to our coral reef. We're going to explore our beautiful, yes, our blue cavern exhibit here at the aquarium. Now, this here is our largest exhibit here at the aquarium, and it has the most amount of species in this exhibit. As you notice, I want you to take a moment to observe, scientists. Check out how many different kinds of creatures you see in here. Try and keep even a count on your hands. How many different kinds of fish do you see? Let's take just a moment to do that now. Pretty amazing, huh? Look at that beautiful ray swimming back through there. Gorgeous. Now, reefs are important habitats. Now, we were talking about the structure of the habitat, right? On land, it's the trees. In the kelp forest, it's the kelp. What would be the main structure of the coral reef? Exactly, the coral, right? But is coral a rock, an animal, or a plant? Take a moment, let's decide. Is it a rock? Is it an animal? Or is it a plant? If you're thinking animal, you're correct. Coral is an incredible animal, and actually what you're seeing here, the hard structure, is the bones of that creature. So coral actually lives inside these structures. Beautiful example right here. So coral, this is coral here, and inside each one, you'll notice there's these little tubes here, and each little tube has a little hole, and in those little holes lives a polyp. And a polyp is the actual animal that builds the coral. These little wiggly guys almost look like little anemones, don't they? These little guys create the structure that becomes the coral reef. Now, there's a lot of different kinds of them, which means they make different kinds of coral, which is why you'll notice, like in our exhibit, there's lots of different types of coral. So, beautiful here. So let's take a moment. We'll go back to that exhibit, see if we can see a couple different kinds of corals. See if you notice any different shapes. Sometimes coral comes in a spiky kind of form. Sometimes it's in a branching form, like down here. Sometimes it even comes in a lumpy form, like some of these little spots on the wall over here. So let's take a moment, see if we can add some coral. This whole wall system here is also modeled after real coral reefs that build huge structures. Let's see if we can draw some coral. All right, so I'm gonna do maybe like a big kind of lumpy style coral over here. We might do like a, ooh, I love tube coral. It looks like a bunch of pool noodles. There's also sponges that look like that too. Okay. Sorry about that. Thank you. Courtney just let me know you couldn't see what I'm drawing. You got to be able to see, right? Okay, so coral. Now, if coral is an animal, what does coral eat? Remember we were talking about that little plankton a little while ago? Those tiny little things floating in the water? Well, there's lots of corals that are filter feeders. They get their energy from filtering in those little planktons. Remember those little grabbing polyps we saw a moment ago? All of those help grab coral. Not grab coral, grab plankton and bring it into them. And that's how they eat. Now there's also little critters like some amazing crabs that help grab that little plankton and bring it into themselves. They've got some special adaptations, which are amazing parts on their body, that help them do this. So we're going to take a look at that now and see if you can take a moment to observe this amazing animal in action. Check it out. So this here is a tiny crab that lives inside this structure on the coral. Notice he made his little home. He's got like a little cave in there. But he has these really long feather-like appendages. And if you notice those feathers, do you see those little floating bits in the water? Those are plankton. Those little feathers work like little nets, grabbing all those little planktons and bringing them into their mouths. Now this is kind of like how another creature takes in plankton. There's another creature who has a big jelly body and long stinging arms that also has arms that are kind of fluffy that help bring in that plankton into their body. Now these amazing creatures, let's see if you can guess. While we're doing that, I want you to take a moment to observe some more different kinds of coral. Check out, this is one of my favorites here. It's not called chicken nugget coral, but I definitely feel like it could be. Look at the shapes on this. Now we were talking about how some coral is hard, right? But do you think all coral is hard? It seems like it would be, but there's actually some corals, like this one right here, that are soft corals. They grow a different kind of structure. There's some right here behind me too. See this kind of fluffy one right here? That's a soft coral. So some of these animals grow a hard, bony kind of structure, and some grow more of a flowy kind of structure. But they're still corals because they have polyps that live inside of them. So let's go back to our scene. I want you to draw in one of those little fluffy crabs because they're so fun. Let's add in one of those and we'll continue exploring. So you can even add that to your coral. I'm going to have my little guy kind of coming out over here. Big fluffy feather arms. Pretty amazing adaptation, isn't it? Okay, so we've got some tiny little filter feeders. I'll put some plankton he's filtering. Beautiful. We got some plankton filtering by our coral. Do you think anything would eat the coral or might eat crabs? There's certainly animals that do. Now, we were talking about jellies a moment ago. Jellies are plankton that can eat. Oh, beautiful. These are some jellies here. These are moon jellies. These are some amazing creatures that you can actually touch here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. This species is important because it's an ambassador species. It's one that we can actually interact with in a safe way that we can learn about and learn from. So an amazing creature teacher here. But these guys are important plankton eaters. Now, if they eat plankton, do you think anything eats a jelly? What might eat a jelly? See if you can draw that creature in on our scene. Go ahead and do that now. So let's get a jelly in. Those wiggly arms for eating the plankton. Were you thinking an animal that maybe is greenish in color, has a big shell, hung out in Finding Nemo? Yeah, turtles are definitely consumers of jellies. Now that's not what all turtles eat, but some of them certainly do. Do you think any animal could, oops, let's scoot this up a little bit. Okay, so we've got some medium-sized creatures that are eating food on our habitat. Now, I wonder what big predators might live on a coral reef. Now, could certainly get up to a big size, but do you think there's anything larger that lives on a reef? Look at this beautiful creature right here, taking a rest. Observe this amazing reptile. Now, turtles are an important species too. Did you know that all species of sea turtles are endangered? It's very important we spend time learning about these amazing animals because then we can find out ways to even help. Did you know that this Friday is actually World Sea Turtle Day? That's a day where we celebrate and we admire these incredible species here. And we ask that you take your time to do something that could help a sea turtle. Did you know we even have local species of sea turtles here in California? Actually, here in Long Beach. At the mouth of the San Gabriel River, there's some warm spots being created by some humans. And by human intervention, we've accidentally attracted some sea turtles to this area that wouldn't normally be here. But if you're interested, you can find out more information on our website about seeing amazing sea turtles here in California. But let's get back to it. I want to take a look at one of our videos of out on a reef, seeing some big predators in action. Take a look here, scientists. Now what we're looking at are some beautiful white-tip reef sharks, and we can tell because, can you see those stunning white tips? Now this is a massive reef structure here. Look at the size of this place. Now this is incredible. Look at all these species. Notice how the sharks are interacting with these species. They certainly look like they're looking for things. But are they thrashing around eating everything they see in sight? Eating every single fish? No way. Sharks are always looking for an easy meal. So they're looking for a fish that's maybe cruising around kind of slow or maybe not feeling so well, which is why sharks are so important in our oceans. Because, especially for those of you who love to eat seafood, like me, it helps take all of the species. They're kind of the cleaners of the ocean. They help take care of the sick and the injured species by eating them. By eating those species, they help keep our populations of fish and other creatures healthy in the oceans. So take a moment. I want you to see if you can add in one of our amazing and beautiful white-tip reef sharks. All right, we got just a few more moments together here. Definitely leave a little white tip there. Boop. They have kind of a pointy nose. Did you know all sharks have between 5 and 7 gill slits? And a little toothy smile. Looking good. Hunting the reef. Now, the last thing I want us to do together is we've drawn these animals, but let's draw in how does the energy move, okay? So I'm going to use this bright color here. So, first things first, let's talk about the kelp forest. The kelp forest gets its energy from the sun. Kelp gets its energy from the sun. What gets its energy from the kelp? Those urchins get energy from the kelp. Does anything get energy from the urchins? Yeah, definitely these otters get their energy from the urchins. What else could eat them? Ooh, what do otters get their energy from? Otters get their energy from sea stars, from urchins, from fish. What about sea lions? We certainly found out they could eat a little shark. They could definitely eat some fish. Do you see how my web is starting to get more complicated? This is important to notice. Let's see if you can try doing your reef on your own. So take a moment. I'm going to do mine too, but take a moment, see if you can make those connections. Where are we getting energy from? So first things first, the sun gives energy to those little tiny plant-like plankton, right? The plant plankton get their energy, the animal plankton get their energy from the plant plankton. And then who was eating plankton? Remember that filter feeder got its energy from there. What about the corals? Got their energy from there. Definitely this one too. What could eat corals? Certainly some fish. Ooh, I definitely didn't add our parrotfish. Gotta do that. Parrotfish could get energy from coral. Jellies get energy from plankton. Turtles get energy from jellies. Sharks can get energy from turtles. or fish. And some sharks, amazingly enough, even get their energy from plankton, like whale sharks. The largest shark on the planet eats the tiniest things in the ocean. It's kind of amazing. Nature always continues to amaze me. But what's really important to think about in this lesson is how cooperative nature is. Nature always finds a way to work together. That's an important word called symbiosis. It's beneficial for one and it's beneficial for the other, and they work together. So, on that note, we want to thank you for joining us today for an amazing episode of the Aquarium Online Academy. I'm so glad to have been with you here today. My name is Soraya. I will see you in the future. I hope you spend some time exploring those food webs. And if you're here in California, go check out those local turtles. Happy World Sea Turtle Day on Friday, team. Have a great day. Keep exploring, scientists.